Hello, welcome to the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. This is week 5. Now we have more than 240 people registered now from at least 3 different continents. And our Discord is filling up with curated information and ideas on topics such as audio, music production, copyrights, needs assessments, hearing assistance systems, and financing. But that number, 3 different continents of people joining from all over the world, that's fabulous. Thank you very much for letting us share and ride in the journey with you. We've even helped one of our attendees, at least, find a qualified contractor in their rural area. And so we're having discussions and responding to questions all week long on the Discord. So please join in. We're posting our agendas for the next few weeks as they get confirmed, and we really want to hear from you whether we're on the right track. We realize that we have a mix of technical and non-technical people here in our audience, and we want our show to be valuable to everyone. So in addition to non-technical topics such as needs assessments, financing, and copyrights, we know that there's a real need to cover technical topics such as equipment selection, wiring, programming, and more. And we're more than ready to help. For today, for example, we're going to do a non-technical overview of sound systems as an introduction to the signal chain from voice to ear and everything in between. Microphones, mixers, amplifiers, speakers, streaming devices, and talking about the mixing process. We want to take a look at cameras, a detailed look at cameras, the various types of cameras, and the best practices for operating them. We can explore, in fact, all of the 8 technical priorities in our list and the topics that fall in between them. So tell us what you want us to talk about. What's the most pressing issue for you? And let us know in the show topics channel on the Discord so that we can plan our programs to help technical volunteers and staff elevate their abilities, your understanding, and your performance. Do you want more or less technically detailed discussion? What if we scheduled a different day specifically for technical talks? Now, there was some big news from the White House this week about increased vaccine production and distribution that could potentially shorten the timeline for our churches to reopen by several months. So we're here and ready to help you even in our virtualized world. We don't necessarily have to be physically with you in your space to help. So reach out, we're here. Okay, on today's panel, we have David O'Connor from the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's a tech team lead coordinator and a theater director by training. Joanna Lovell, or J-Lo over here. She's earned her technology specialist certification from Avixa, and she's a virtual content creator, a choir director, music director, audio engineer, and she collaborates with a number of churches on the East Coast. Mark Plukas from Franklin, Massachusetts is the operations manager for an independent AV control systems programming company, having been in the audio engineering, design, and entertainment industry since the 1970s. We have Jay Paul from Ellicott City, Maryland. He is the national key account manager for a leading leading manufacturer of innovative network pro audio solutions. He's also a concert sound engineer, and he's been the lead audio engineer for SUSE, the Southern Unitarian Universalist Summer Institute, since 2009. We have Christal Vokes. Am I pronouncing that right?
I'm muted. It's Crystal Vakes.
Vakes,
so you know, because
okay.
it's German, so we have to be really confusing.
Well, good.
And I'm just an all-around and general internet nerd and tech for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, you wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
Project management, consulting, editing, systems admin, web development. Fabulous. Thank you for being here. And we have Leo Mindell from London, the one on the other side of the ocean. He's the founding director of digital sports agency Sodic, who has been delivering websites and streaming to the world governing bodies for over 20 years, including the first ever live top European soccer match back in 2001. So I'm your host, Marty Atias of ATS Communications in Silver Spring. I've been a media production and communications engineer for 45 years, first in New York City and now in Maryland. My production experience ranges from broadcast, radio, and television to music recording, live performance, networking, telephone communications. I'm a consultant, system design and integration engineer, a sound mixer, and an editor. So I help corporate, retail, and house of worship clients to make technology work to improve their operations. And I've been a member of the Silver Spring UU Church for 11 years. So thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you for your invaluable contributions. Now, while some of us here on the panel are available for consulting or contracting, this show is not about us. It is entirely about you. And it's your questions and comments that will drive the show's agenda and the topics we discuss. And the panel is open. If you feel that you can add value or an alternate viewpoint to our panel, then by all means, contact me on the Discord and we'll talk. So our attendees' microphones will all be muted throughout the show, and we don't use the Zoom chat feature. If you want your questions read, and we do encourage that, put it in the Discord channel named Questions for the Panel. And because we want our question moderator to easily find your questions during the show, please put all non-question comments and chats in the Discord channel named Zoom Chat Channel. And they're welcome there, and we do read that as well during the show. If you're new to Discord, we'll be happy to offer an orientation sometime after the show or during the week. Let us know, and we can schedule a time for you. So now, the Discord is our companion platform that provides 24/7 space for discussion and information sharing that's directly related to our show. It's a valuable resource. All of our panelists monitor it all throughout the week. We're having discussions with people and answering questions and dealing with issues. And it's a great resource, so let's participate. Okay, so let's get into it. We've been talking about the first two steps on the journey from virtual to hybrid ministry, which are determining the goals of any upgrade project as the very first step, and using a needs assessment to figure out how to get there. And we will revisit that important second step of the needs assessment when we reveal the winners of our contest. Now, we have a number of new people here in the last week or two, so let's take a quick moment to catch you up. A needs assessment is a questionnaire, very extensive questionnaire that does two things. It helps you to define the motivations and goals for a technology upgrade, and to provide a context and parameters for a consultant or contractor to develop a plan to design a system that helps you to accomplish those goals. Now, the contest we're running is on the Discord. You can find not one, but two needs assessment questionnaires that we've provided, and you can download those and fill them out and send them back to us. And we are going to pick 3 of those, one for each of 3 sizes of congregations: a very small congregation, a small congregation, and a mid-sized congregation. And the panelists here are going to do a needs analysis for you for free. And we're going to talk about it here on the show. And we're going to make recommendations. We're going to look at your entire space. You'll be sending us pictures and diagrams and telling us all about your services and all about your church, all about the events that happen in your sanctuary and community hall space. And we're going to figure out recommendations for a system to put in. So audio, we'll look at audio, video, lighting, sound, streaming, the whole works. And we'll be making recommendations. And that will take into account the size of your church and your budget, of course. Now, today is the deadline that we established for entries, but because it took us a little longer than we hoped to get those documents posted, and we have so many new people here, we are willing to extend the deadline. I think we'll give another 2 weeks. How's that? So by Thursday of 2 weeks will be the new deadline. If you've already submitted one and you want to modify it, by all means, you're welcome to. Everybody else, you can take a look at those and start filling them out. They're very extensive, so don't wait till the last minute. So once there's the needs analysis, needs assessment, the next step is to break down all of the potential tasks. Excuse me a sec. Into manageable subsystems and to prioritize them. Now, while not everyone will be upgrading every system, every subsystem, the order of priorities is important, and it's good to know which ones you should be planning for. Now, for the second half of today's show, we're going to begin with an overview of technical priority number 2, which is sound. And this one will be for the non-technical decision makers. Good equipment is expensive. So a basic understanding of why it's important and what goes into producing good sound can really help your decision and budgeting process. So it's not going to be real intensive, not going to be real technical, but it'll be a good overview so that you can get an idea of what a sound system is. What are the components? How do they fit together? Why do your AV crew asking for all this money? But our first topic today starts a 3-week series that we're doing on the seemingly endless maze of legal and ethical questions about copyright licensing. And today, our own Crystal Vakes will be going to tell us about the wealth of free music, video, and still imagery that is available for use without fees. So have I got that right, Crystal? Isn't everything copyrighted?
Yes, it's still copyrighted, but there's a way around it. Ooh. So, is it my turn to take over now? All right.
If you're ready, go
I
ahead.
am ready. Let me get my face off the screen because
I got to say, we've been looking forward to this now for a couple of weeks. And Crystal's been working really hard on a presentation, and she's done this before. So
no pressure, Crystal.
I'm taking notes.
We've all been waiting.
I got my pen.
Wow, no pressure at all. Okay, cool. I love you guys.
We love
all
you.
Right. Well, onwards we go into the wonderful world of Creative Commons. Hold on tight, and don't worry if you don't get notes for everything. I will be available in the Discord later, and I have a surprise for all of you. So off we go. All right. First up.
So right now we're seeing, there you go. Okay, thanks.
Creative Commons, royalty free and public domain, AKA how to find cool stuff on the internet for use in hybrid worship. It's a pretty straightforward concept. Okay, so first let's give you a really quick history of, because I'm a nerd and I like history, free stuff on the internet. So 1969, we had the UK Open University start. 1983 was the beginning of the free software movement, which began with the launch of something called GNU. And yes, everybody sees GNU and they think new. It's not, it's GNU, just like it's GIF, not GIF. We're nerds and we have to be weird. Then the World Wide Web launched in 1989. A lot of you came to it in the 90s, but it actually came out in 89, and you would not recognize the original form it took. Creative Commons was founded much later in 2001. And the same year, both MIT's courseware, which is meant for open learners of all ages, and Wikipedia both came online, whereas Wikipedia was the first website that was ever created predominantly from Creative Commons content. 2003 is when Creative Commons hit its first 1 million licenses, which is a pretty big thing for something that started out as kind of an idea that a bunch of geeks had. And by 2006, no less than just 3 years later, it hit 50 million works. There are currently 1.6 billion registered works as of 2020. So huge, huge growth, exponential. And that's covering movies, music, books, everything you could think of, scientific papers, peer-reviewed, including, and just amazing, amazing amounts of work and software. So, all right, so let's answer the question, what the heck is a Creative Common? I'm going to leave this to the experts because really they say it better than I ever could.
What does it mean to be human if we don't have a shared culture? And what does a shared culture mean if you can't share it?
It's only in the last 100 or 150 years or so that we've started tightly restricting how that culture gets used.
The internet enabled an infrastructure where anybody could participate without asking permission.
We have all these new technologies that allow people to express themselves, take control of their own creative impulses, but the law is getting in the way.
Creative Commons is designed to save the world from failed sharing. People who actually want to share stuff, who put it up on the web because they want to share it on certain terms.
So we wanted to create a simple way for creators to say to the world, here's the freedom that I want to run with my creative work. Here are the things you're allowed to do.
Can I reproduce it? Can I copy it? Can I put it in my textbook? Can I use that photograph? Can I make a new version of it?
Creative Commons gives tools to creators to make a choice about copyright.
Creative Commons license can cover anything that copyright covers.
Every license says, you need to give me attribution. I created this, give me credit for the work I did.
The basic choices are commercial use or not. Can you make derivative works, versions, adaptations, or not? And do you want me to have to share alike? So if I take your stuff, do I have to offer it to the next person under the same terms?
There's no requirement for you to do anything with your work other than what you want to do. You own the copyright to it. What we've done is given you the right to exercise your copyright in more ways, more simply.
So the idea here is to enable the creative impulses that the technology turns loose and get the law out of the way.
The work of Creative Commons is really about laying the infrastructure groundwork for this new type of culture, a new kind of folk culture.
Somebody from Delhi, somebody from New York, somebody from Singapore
can feel comfortable using a photo that was created and given away by someone in the United States or in China or wherever that the licenses have been extended to.
with their identity being preserved.
Which means that people can actually create new kinds of things, come together and build things.
Mashups that people can do with people's Flickr photos.
And CC Mixter has allowed artists to make music together.
It's really about creativity and connection.
Access and control.
From amateurs who simply for the love of what they're doing and they want to share it and they want other people to be able to make use of it, to commercial organizations.
In the end, this will have a very successful place in the for-profit economy.
Creative Commons is the bridge to this future. Is you got to move away from thinking about content to thinking about communities. Communities that develop around content, and the sharing that the licenses allow enable these communities to come together.
A physical commons is like a park where anybody can enter equally. A commons with intellectual works is actually much freer.
It really is going to be the pillar for communications between people, cultural exchange.
The space for more speech, more free expression.
And that's the kind of commons we're trying to create.
And of course, we have to give credit to the people whose interesting works were used, because that's how Creative Commons do. Okay, so that answers roughly what the whole point of Creative Commons is, but it doesn't really give you kind of the why. So we're going to take a look at that next. Again, I'm going to rely on the shoulders of prior Creative Commons creators because really they're going to explain it way better than I will.
These are Jack and Meg White, also known as the White Stripes. They're a band from Detroit. They make rock and roll without a bass guitarist. This is Steve Mcdonald of the veteran band Red Cross. Steve thought the White Stripes could use a bass player, so he appointed himself. He took the White Stripes album, called White Blood Cells, and re-recorded it, laying a bass track down on every song. Then he released the results as MP3s on Red Cross's website. He even made up a new album cover entitled Red Blood Cells. Mcdonald began putting these copyrighted songs online without permission from the White Stripes or their record label. During the project, he bumped into Jack White, who gave him spoken assent to continue. It can be that easy when you skip the intermediaries. Collaboration across space and time. Creative co-authorship with people you've never met. Standing on the shoulders of your peers. It's what the internet is all about. It can be that easy when you skip the intermediaries. But couldn't it be easier still? Not many of us are liable just to bump into Jack White and get the green light, and he's not going to let just anyone play the bass over his songs in any case. But what about other artists who might want you or me to play along? Shouldn't we be able to, if they don't mind? Enter one of the internet's most famous citizens. A face familiar the world over, a public identity rivaled only by a handful of corporate giants and global superstars, the Big Copyright C. Everyone knows what Big C stands for. Big C means all rights reserved. Big C means ask permission. Big C protects copyright owners and notifies the rest of us of their ownership. Time was when you had to put Big C on anything you wanted to copyright, or else it entered the public domain, the commons of information where nothing is owned and all is permitted. You had to put the world on notice to warn them. That was Big C's job, and it was a useful one. What changed? The law. By the late 1980s, U.S. law had changed so that works become copyrighted automatically the moment they're made. The moment you hit save on that research paper, the second the shutter snaps closed, the instant you lift your pen from that cocktail napkin doodle, your creation is copyrighted, whether Big C makes a cameo or not. So suddenly, there's no quick way of knowing whether something's owned or not. The new rules may be clear about how you get to own a work. You don't have to do anything, but they say nothing at all about how you should go about announcing that you want to allow certain uses of your work. So what? Well, if you're a digital filmmaker whose every frame must be cleared by an army of lawyers before making the cut, or if you're in a band whose label won't let you put a song on a file-sharing network, or if you're a professor trying to put together online course materials, or if you're a DJ chasing down permission to use every snippet of song in your sonic collage, if you're one of these people, then you know, so what? We interrupt this brainstorm to call the lawyers. You drop what you're doing and call all the lawyers. You ask for permission, even to use a work whose author doesn't mind if you use it, because you have no idea what the author's intent is. You ask for permission, even to share some of your rights. Or you venture forward unsure what your risks and rights are exactly. Or, in a haze of legal doubt, you do nothing. The bottom line, Big C is out of a job. The middlemen are not. Enter Creative Commons. Creative Commons wanted to find an easy way to help people tell the world up front that they want to allow some uses of their work. We called the experts, the U.S. Copyright Office, for advice. Their response? There's no real answer. Get creative. So we got creative. How? Our CC brand marks works that are governed by Creative Commons licenses. A set of standardized copyright licenses available free of charge on our website. We wrote these licenses so that lawyers and courts could read them. Then we translated them into a language you can read. And then we translated them into a language computers can read. Now, CC isn't meant to compete with copyright, but to complement it. It allows you to retain your copyright while granting the world permission to make certain uses of it upon certain conditions. If the Big C is like a red light, then CC is a green light. If the Big C says no trespassing, the double C says please come in. If the Big C says all rights reserved, CC says some rights reserved. So you can use the powers of the net to find works free to share and build upon, and to invite other people to transform or trade yours so that you can get creative, not only with what you make, but how you make it available. So you can collaborate across space and time. So you can be a co-author with someone you've never met. So you can stand on the shoulders of your peers, all without asking permission, because permission has already been granted. Creative Commons. Get creative. It's easy when you skip the intermediaries.
And there you go. Credits for this one. So that's a lot to take in, I know. Thanks so much for being patient. We'll kind of give you a quick overview of there are only 6. The big thing you need to know with Creative Commons is that there's only a handful of licenses, and they're all pretty much in human language, as that video says. So what do the licenses mean? Well, they're really pretty simple. Like I said, there's only 6 of them. They're all human readable, and they all have these wonderful little glyphs, meaning that you can readily identify them by those symbols too. The most basic is called attribution or CC BY. This is basically whenever you receive a work or you find a work that is licensed under CC BY, all that person wants is credit, period. It is the absolute best license if you're looking to find materials to use in creating hybrid worship, because it allows you the most latitude in terms of what you can do with it. You can remix it, you can share it, you can distribute it, you can adapt it, build upon it, even commercially. So it's really awesome, and it's definitely the best license to look for, CC BY. The next one is attribution share alike. Now this one has some caveats to it that some people may not be entirely comfortable with, and some people may be just fine with. It's really all dependent on your use case. This is a good license to use because it is one of the less restrictive licenses. The big thing you need to understand is that anything that is used, that you use under a CC BY SA license or attribution share alike license, can then be shared and used. You cannot take an CC BY SA piece and not share it. That's it. If you use a CC BY SA piece, that's it. Your work has to be released under the same license. That's the terms of the license. Again, you might not have a problem with that. Like if you're using part of somebody else's song, or using a song in a video, and then you put the video on YouTube and you're okay with people sharing your video, or maybe, you know, snagging your remix of the song and putting it on their video. All depends on how you want to play that. But it does allow others to remix, adapt, and build upon your work. So that's one of the big things I want to thread or point out. As long as they're crediting you and their license is also under a CC BY SA. Now, it can also be slightly more restrictive, which is another license I'll talk about later. The big one you want to know about with regard to the CC BY SA, though, anything from Wikipedia is CC BY SA, the entire site. So CC BY ND, which is by attribution non-derivatives or no derivatives. I don't know why this one is the only one that's truncated as opposed to writing out no derivatives. We wrote no derivatives. I want to say it's probably because somebody didn't know how to spell it, because that's a thing sometimes. We like to shorten things up. This is a very restrictive license. So in terms of licensing, the one you want to be aware of is that this means you can only use the work exactly as you got it. So as with, as I say here, some cases it might be fine, like watching TED Talks or playing music in a coffee shop if you have a coffee shop on site, or other type of situation like that. And in other situations like doing a Sunday service where you're going to show slides and have lyrics and show pictures of kittens, maybe not so good, because that's a derivative that allows for transformative work. And that's outside of the scope of the license. The next one is Attribution Non-Commercial. This is great for all churches. As long as you're registered as a 501c3, you're fine. You are golden. The only catch with this one you have to be aware with is that you want to avoid using any of these materials for anything where you would be charging for attendance or for physical media. So if you're going to be selling CDs, DVDs, or maybe having like a fair or an on-site event where you're going to be charging attendance, don't use it there. Anything else, you're pretty much carte blanche good. So, and again, for artists looking to share, it allows everybody remix, adapt, and build upon the work. The catch is non-commercial. Non-commercial, no derivatives. This is the single most restrictive license in Creative Commons. In terms of using works, I say it's generally best avoided. I know some people who will use these, but I'm not one of them. As I say here, if you change anything, it's considered transformative use. Transformative use can lead to a misunderstanding with regard to the artist's original intent with regard to their work. And frankly, it's just not a cool thing to do with somebody else's work. So that's why we don't want to do that. Whereas if you're sharing it exactly as you found it, like you're putting it on your church's Facebook page or something like that, that's totally fine. That's where using a CC BY and CND piece is going to be no problem, because you're actually sharing it as it was, as you received it. But what about royalty-free and public domain? I hear you say. The big thing you need to understand about royalty-free is that it means about the same thing as organic on a bag of apples. Nothing. It means nothing whatsoever legally. As far as the internet goes, there's kind of a bit of an honor code with use with royalty-free. And royalty-free are usually works that, like, say, a third-party company will buy, and then they will put on a website with a bunch of other licensed or purchased content from creators in a way to draw you to their website so they can shove ads at you, or they can put tracking cookies in your browser or what have you, or sell premium memberships that give you more content. So that's kind of what royalty-free is. It's a double-edged sword. I like royalty-free. I use a lot of it. But on the other hand, I also have a lot of, I lock down all my cookie settings and I have ad blockers. So that's a thing. Although I do tend to allow ads on sites that are a part of royalty-free and or Creative Commons, because again, these are sites that are making things available for me for use, and I want them to get paid. So the big thing with public domain, actually, it has its own Creative Commons mark. It's called CC0 or Creative Content 0 or Creative Commons 0, which means zero license needed. It actually has its own mark as well. The big thing you need to know with with copyright in the United States is that copyright is defined as the life of the author plus an additional 70 years. So works prior to 1923, which is when the laws changed in the 80s, are in the public domain. Again, when the laws changed, it was the Sonny Bono Copyright Act, etc., aka the Disney Copyright Act. That's a lot of stuff. You can Google it if you're curious. But the big other takeaway is that creators can choose to put their stuff in the public domain as well. Woo! All right, cancel. It's telling me I'm out of time, so I'm going to make this really, really fast. The good news is the rest of this is really, really fast. So where do I find all of this free stuff? Google. And I'm not even joking. But in all seriousness, we've got you covered. I've spent the last several days building a Creative Commons website that we're making available for members of this forum, for our Discord, that have a lot of links for Creative Commons, royalty-free, and public domain works. And this is including music, video, all kinds of good stuff, photos, etc. We will be linking that on the Discord for you to check out later. So keep an eye on that. And on that note, here are my credits, because this is a Creative Commons released piece of work. Thank you so much for your time. And now we will field questions for anyone curious.
Oh, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. Yes. And it was a Creative Commons work. That's
It
beautiful.
was. It shows the site. The site I have released is also in Creative Commons.
All right. And so there is on the Discord, there is a category and a channel underneath it called copyright licensing. And Crystal will drop the link in there. And that includes, is that the same slide presentation or something similar to it?
No, it does not contain this slides presentation, mainly because it's all pretty obvious. It does have links to the Creative Commons site where all of this information was couched from. So you can always find all of that there.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, let's get to some questions. J-Lo?
There is one question, and I just navigated off of it. So the question is from Deborah Mensch. She says, if I make a work that is essay and post it on YouTube, do I need to state the license in the info field?
Okay, I would recommend doing so, yes. And it's actually going to be CC by essay, because you can never remove the by from that portion of it. You will always receive attribution. That's the first rule of Creative Commons Club. You always receive attribution. So yes, I would put that actually in the very bottom. But another thing I would do is there's actually a separate field for YouTube. When you upload a video that allows you to choose your license, you have the option to choose Creative Commons at that time. And the reason why I stress this is because, as you will find out when you go to the resource site I've posted, there is a search that will specifically look for Creative Commons licensed content. And it will skip anything that doesn't have that designation field. So be sure to add that. Even if you add it in the text field, if you don't select that license under the licensing, it will not find it. So make sure you do both, just to make sure.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you show us something that has a glyph
A
that
glyph?
we can observe? A glyph?
Sure.
Did I say it wrong?
The icon, but yeah, I
Yes.
mean what you know.
Thank you.
No problem. Give me 1 second to take back screen sharing. I got to make sure I'm going to share the right screen. You guys don't go poking around in my stuff. All right, here we go. Let me get this off. Actually, I can close this other window because I don't need it anymore. So that opens up my second screen as opposed to all that. And I apologize for everybody who's been like, why is she looking that way? I have screen. So
It's okay.
That's
you
why.
know you're paying attention.
I am paying attention to you. I'm just spread out. I've got one of those weird things with all the arms. So here's the resource site I built out. And we're actually just going to go on ahead and be super lazy and flip over to the Creative Commons tab, because Creative Commons has all the Creative Commons stuff you could possibly want. Here you go. Here's the Creative Commons glyph down here at the bottom, the two little icons. It's a CC BY. And it tells you right here, except where otherwise noted, content on this site is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License.
Cool.
And if you
That's all
want to,
stuff
and if you
that's
want
on
to,
Creative Commons website. Is there stuff out in the wild, I guess?
Oh gosh, yes.
That is.
This is why I built this site. Let's take a look. Say you want to find some music. Well, I've put on a bunch. There's the International Music Score Library Project, which has all been released under the CC. Here we go. Content is available under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0. So keep in mind anything you're going to pull off of here. If you're using the work in its native form, and this is going to be a fun one, like if you're actually showing the sheet music, don't do that. Because at that point, you're showing the work in its native form. And at that point, it's an essay. If you were using the sheet music to play your own music, this is actually kind of a loophole. Because if you're using the sheet music to play your own music, then at that point, you're making a different work altogether. Ha-ha.
You're making
See, there are catches.
Right.
It is a derivative, and you're allowed to do that under an
And plus,
essay.
you've already bought the sheet music.
No,
presumably.
it's free.
Oh, okay. I see.
It's free.
So if you download a piece of sheet music and you play it, you've made a derivative.
You've made actually a transformative work.
Okay.
Because you've changed it from a piece of paper that you're looking at to a piece of music that can then. So derivative is I'm using a part of your work in my work, as in you can physically see it. It's represented within that work. Transformative is considered, generally speaking, now keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice, blah, but we're on the internet, so I have to say that. Transformative is when you change it from one medium to another. So you're taking a piece of sheet music and you are recording it. That is a transformative work. So, but as I said, there's all kinds of sheet music out here. So say you wanted some Beethoven. I hope I'm spelling that right. Yep. And it's actually going to Google search its site. It basically does the Googling for you. But it shows you all the different stuff that's out here. It'll show you links to Wikipedia in French. It has some recordings out here. And there's all kinds of other things out here. And again, compositions. We have so many compositions. So all the compositions you could possibly want. We'll click on one at random. And here's complete performances. Now here's a big important one you need to know with this one. If there are commercial recordings, they have a tab for that, but don't go there. These are not Creative Commons works. These are. So if you see it under recordings, you're fine. You see it under commercial, believe the commercial, that's a copyright, don't go there. Okay. So again, sheet music, and it shows you different arrangements and transcriptions people have contributed as well. So that's actually pretty cool. And it gives you scanned works that are really, really old and usually in public domain.
We have two more questions. Speaking of old, because one of the questions is, isn't the cutoff year for public domain now 1926?
Yeah, it is actually, now that you point that out. But again, I was scraping from the CC site and I didn't really have time to go look at that before I go on here.
Okay.
So.
And then Leo asks if you have a recommendation of a version of the Bible you can use that is CC.
I do not. I have not looked for one. I apologize, Leo, but that is a great idea.
Great question.
Wait. The Bible is copyrighted?
It is.
Probably.
Believe it or not, it is. And I can, funny story about that. 3 weeks ago, I got copyright cited by I don't even remember where they were from, but basically somewhere in the Middle East. We got copyright cited by a television channel for 2 minutes, which was our minister reading from Corinthians, because that chunk of audio matched the chunk of audio on one of their recordings. And the algorithm said, hey, this sounds like this. That's our stuff. You shouldn't use that. So they hit us with a DMCA copyright takedown notice and monetized our Sunday service. Wow. I immediately counterclaimed it. And basically, because I've done DMCAs for years, I know this stuff backwards.
What's a DMCA? I'm sorry, go back.
The Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You have Sonny Bono to thank for a lot of this stuff. This is basically the stuff that keeps Mickey Mouse in copyright till 2026, I think it is, and then Steamboat Willie falls out, but not the modern day Mickey Mouse, because there's got to be confusion in all of that. Hey, anyway,
wait a second. I'm still on Digital Millennial.
Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Thank you. Okay. Now
basically, what it is it says that ISPs and sites like Google and YouTube and what have you can't be sued for hosting copyrighted material that users put out there. So that's pretty much what a DMCA is. Anyway, so that's with regard to that. But getting back to the story, we got hit with a takedown. We got our Sunday service monetized by this Middle Eastern channel whose name I can't remember. It's like Raj or something. And I sent back a counter notice and said, hey, yes, that is a copyrighted piece, but we are using it under fair use because we are using less than 10% of the work. And it is less than 20% of the overall video, which is an hour-long service, and it's a 2-minute clip. So,
wow,
nice try.
How did how do you suppose they were able to claim copyright on it?
It was automated. I have no doubt it was automated, because what happened? Basically, what happened was I sent back the counterclaim. They filed it and removed the monetization link at that point, and removed the little flag, except on the back end. And it said, you know, hey, they have 10 days to respond. So that 10 days came and went, and it fell off. And basically, it closes out.
Place. Like, how is that copyrighted by them in the first place? Is that what you mean, Marty?
Oh, translations of the Bible. So like New Living Translations, things like that. Those are under copyright more often than not. So like King James, you're fine. King James, you know, died off years ago. His Bible went with him. We're good. New Living Translations, modern translations, most likely in copyright, double check. And a lot of people don't know that, because I certainly didn't think about it until we got hit. The good news is most Bible websites, if you go to the actual publisher, will say, you know, as long as you only use X amount or certain number of verses, you're fine. So,
question in the box is, what do you mean that they monetize it?
I mean, they put ads on it. Sometimes, like if you go to YouTube and you see the videos where you see a commercial before you see the video, or sometimes you see a video where it's got a little commercial, like a little box at the very bottom that sits there, and you kind of have to click out of it to get away from it, or they run a commercial during the video, which is called an interstitial video. Basically, they slap commercials on it. So that's what monetize means. They're basically trying to earn money from it, from ad revenue.
Well, cool. Thank you. Somebody's asking about the Singing in the Living Tradition, which is a UU hymnal.
Right.
We're going to hear about that in the next couple of. So this is a 3-week series. One of them. So I have guests that I'm trying to line up, and I was hoping to get confirmation to announce on the show, but I'll give you a little preview. I can't promise, and I don't know when, but I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. We're going to have people from CCS and CCLI here on the show, and we're going to do an expanded edition of the show. It's such a deep and extensive topic that we may just do the whole show, the whole hour and a half or to 2 hours on with CCS and CCLI.
What are CCS and CCLI?
So Christian Copyright Solutions, and I have to look up CCLI. They are sister organizations that create blanket copyrights. So where a copyright you may get for a particular piece of work, their licenses, if you buy it from them, they cover several thousand songs that are in their library that allow you to either perform it or to web stream it or both, to use lyrics. They have different types of licenses that cover different applications, different uses for the work. And it's cool because the blanket license covers many, many, many different songs. You just have to be sure that the music that you're going to be using falls under their copyright jurisdiction. If not, then you have to look elsewhere for use of that song. But they will explain this, and they are copyright experts on this. And so when you're looking to use really copyrighted work that you will have to pay for, they make it very easy to do. They have very clear guidelines on. Sometimes you have to send in a monthly accounting of what songs you use and what you use them for, but it's not terribly complicated. It's just a matter of keeping track of what you use and bookkeeping and sending in a report. So that would be.
We're going to have another guest from the UUA, right?
And so that'll be the second show. The third show will be someone from the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Headquarters Association, who wrote a lot of the guidelines and information for all of the UU churches that's posted on the UUA website. And so she worked with CCS and CCLI and did a lot of her own research. And she provided information about the two hymnals and what can be used, who to contact, which ones are public domain, which ones are not. And so we're going to be hearing from her as well. And that'll be our 3-part series on copyright. I think we'll cover it pretty well. So stay tuned for the dates. I'm hoping to get CCS, CCLI in here next week, but it might be the week after. And then the UA will follow that. So stay tuned. Do we have any other questions before we move on?
Can I just comment on that really quickly, Marty? Just to cover 2 things for those who are not in the US. CCLI also has licenses around the world. So the CCLI is available in the UK. On my side of the fence, if that's the right way of saying it, for the Jewish organizations, we have J license, which is a very similar situation. I think literally every religious organization now has an equivalent of CCLI.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, they are global, at least CCLI, and I'm not sure about CCS. They are worldwide organizations that cover different countries. That's very useful information.
We also recommend normally to put, when you actually produce your if you have liturgy that you put up on the screen, to put your license number in a page somewhere in your liturgy.
In the order of service, sometimes
in the order of service somewhere, so that it's seen on your, so it is actually seen on the screen for future, so that when you bring in heavyweight people like Crystal to help you out, then at least you can show you tried.
Yes, attributing the work that you're using to its proper owners is always a really good thing to do anytime. I do see one other question here.
Yes, there's one more question. So this is from Linda McPherson for you, Crystal.
Okay.
So if I want to use Creative Commons instrumental music for Prelude or Postlude music in a Zoom format, no broadcasting to Facebook or recordings on YouTube, which CC licenses will work for that? We would typically be showing slides with church announcements, etc., including one that offered attribution.
I actually use, interestingly enough, I also use instrumental music in Prelude and Postlude, although mainly Prelude. Basically what I do is I put a little attribution at the bottom, but I tend to stick with CC BY because it's, again, the greatest license. The other thing is that if you go to Bandcamp, again, there's a search for, or some explanation on how to search for music on Bandcamp on the resource site I've created. But if you go there, look for like an ambient piece or classical pieces, there's tons of great stuff. Like I bought some guy's entire catalog. I think it was 89 albums of ambient music for $10. So I use a lot of that for Prelude and Postlude, and his rights are actually CC BY. So CC BY and CCNC are going to be your 2 bests. You can also do SA, up to you whether or not you're okay with people potentially remixing what you're doing with it. So there's that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. That was an excellent segment. I like it. It's good to have you here. Thank you so much. Okay, well, let's move on to the second half of our show. So why is sound so important? I mean, you've got pictures, right? Well, whether it's in person or on a screen somewhere, it's been well documented, well studied, and just look at your own habits. If you have great pictures, but distorted or inaudible sound or things you can't hear, you're not going to stick around because it's not going to be a very pleasant experience for you. Film producers, television producers, video artists, conference producers, this is very common knowledge in all of these industries that you can have great sound with no pictures, and we call that radio. But great pictures with no sound are called technical difficulties. And while pictures relay information, sound conveys emotion as well as information. And this makes it the most important technical priority in any presentation system, whether it be for live presentation, in person, or online. And the reason that it's number 2 is because for online purposes, the number 1 priority is your network, your ability to get your show, your presentation out to the world. If you don't have that, you've got pretty much nothing. So sound may drop down to number 2, but it is the most important of any of the other priorities, more important than pictures. So what is a sound system? What goes into a sound system? So let's take a look at mixing sound for church. You have, whatever size your congregation is, whatever size your sanctuary is, whether it be small or large, you have a sound system. This is a picture from a General Assembly where there are 4,000 people in the audience and it looks like half of them are on stage singing. But everything begins with a mixer. It could be a very simple analog mixer like this one, or a large digital mixing desk like this one. They basically work the same. They're just in a large desk like this, there's more of the same controls, just repeated over and over and over and over again. So it's really handy to understand just even a basic analog mixer because it gives you a real good introduction into what larger desks can do. But this is not for technical people. This one is for everybody else. So let's take a look at what a sound system is and what are all the components that go into it. It starts with the voice. And when you're singing, you're in an acoustic space. And that acoustic space can affect what the microphone picks up. If you're in a very reverberant stairwell, the microphone will pick up that ambience. If you're outside in the city and you've got lots of traffic noise, the microphone is going to pick that up as well as you. So the acoustic space, there's your voice, there's the acoustic space, and then there's the microphone. And the microphone connects to a mixer, which is a type of amplifier that allows you to control levels and to take multiple inputs and blend them together. And then from the mixer, we go into a power amplifier. Power amplifier takes that signal from the mixer and multiplies it, amplifies it, and that goes out to loudspeakers. And those are the 4 basic components of a sound system. It's not really any more complicated than that. Now, it can look complicated, but the functions are really all the same. There are many different types of loudspeakers, many different types of amplifiers, many different types of mixers, and many different types of microphones. And
Marty chose the most comical versions of them to show you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we're going to have a discussion here, so the panelists are welcome to chime in with useful questions, and snide comments are also welcome as well. We're all friends here. So there are different kinds of, starting from the beginning, there are different kinds of microphones, and they all sound different, and they do different things, and they're like paintbrushes and paints to an artist. These are tools that we use, like different kinds of hammers and different kinds of screwdrivers and different kinds of wrenches and different kinds of nails and different kinds of screws. They all serve different purposes that all serve the same purpose, and that is to create something, that is replicative of an acoustic experience. Sometimes not replicative, sometimes it's completely original. But all of these things get selected according to what it is we're trying to work with. Now, we're not done with the signal path from the voice to the microphone, to the mixer, to the power amplifier, to the speakers. There's the last few feet is from the speakers to your ears. And that is also an acoustically involved space. Loudspeakers interact with the room that they are in, or the space that they are in, and that space can affect the sound before it arrives at your ears. So again, if we look at, if you ever ride on a subway and you're on the platform and the loudspeaker comes on, the train conductor is announcing something, the acoustics of that subway station are completely different from the acoustics in a concert hall or in your house when you're watching television.
Is that
You
why you
still
can never
have-
understand the announcements that go off in the subway?
That's
Train number 1.
That's exactly right. It's a very reverberant space, and all of those
There's
reflections bouncing off of all of those
no
walls.
speech intelligibility at all.
That's right. It all affects speech intelligibility. So when you have, and I know this is very common, and it's a very common issue, when you have a sanctuary room that has lots and lots of hardwoods and hard sheetrock walls and glass for ambient lighting and hard ceilings, and sometimes the floor are terrazzo tile, which look really nice, and sometimes they're concrete. All of those hard surfaces are reflecting sound, and as they bounce off the walls and ceilings and combine, all of those reflections combine, they could do some really weird stuff to your sound. I mean, so I've been in rooms where I've been doing acoustic testing, and I'll play a low frequency sound like the note of a bass guitar, and I'll just have that note just playing, repeating, and I'll walk around the room and I'll sit in one seat, and that note, that single note, is really loud and present and strong. And then I'll move 4 seats to my right. Can't hear it at all. Completely gone, completely disappeared. And that's because the reflections are combining in such a way at that seat where they're canceling each other out. Acoustics is a really important part of the equation about how your sound system is, how intelligible your sound system is, how colored your sound system is, and whether everybody in the room is hearing the same thing or are they hearing different things. I may be at the mixing desk where I'm hearing one thing, but somebody sitting in a seat halfway across the room may be hearing something completely different. So the adjustments that I'm making to the mix and what I'm hearing may be completely different from somebody else. So acoustics plays a big important part in the totality of what a sound system is.
So Marty, do you want to talk a little bit about the listener at the other end of the stream as
Yes,
well?
and that's the next part of it, right?
Okay.
I'm going to cut away from my PowerPoint and come back to you. Nice to see you. So yes, there is a difference between mixing for people in the room and mixing for people listening to your stream. And if you think about what you hear when you're in a room, and this is very applicable to music, and it's an easier illustration to demonstrate and understand. If you have a single person playing guitar and singing, and you have a large space, chances are you're going to be amplifying both the guitar and the voice. And that's great. That's what you're putting out to your loudspeakers. That's all there is. They're mic'd, they're in the mixer, and you're going to be sending those out on your stream. Beautiful, perfect. But let's say you have a band and you have drums, electric bass guitar, electric lead guitar. You may have some other instruments. You have a piano that is a grand piano, so it's loud in the space. And you don't really need to amplify these things because they generate enough energy right coming off of the stage that they don't need any additional amplification. What
If
you
you're
are
listening in the
amplifying,
room.
if you're listening in the room, what you are amplifying are the vocals and maybe a flute or electric keyboard, which doesn't have an amplifier. So anything that whose natural volume can't keep up with the drums, the bass, the guitars, you'll want to amplify. And this is what we call sound reinforcement. We're reinforcing those lower volumed instruments to balance and blend properly for people in the room to hear everything. And that's great. But now, what do you have in your mixer and sending out on your stream? Only the things you have mic'd. So I'm going to play a little demonstration. I have a multi-track queued up, something that was recorded at a church. It has different tracks for every instrument and every microphone that was on the stage. And what I'm going to play for you first is that recording, which does not include the drums, the bass, the guitar, or the piano. And we'll listen to what the effect really is. Okay, so now what you were hearing of the drums and the guitar is bleed from the vocal microphones. And, you know, it doesn't sound awful, but let's hear the difference. I'm going to play that again. Then I'm going to bring in the piano, and then I'm going to bring in the drums. And then we'll hear everything balanced. Now I'm going to take out the drums.
It's the next best thing to be free as a bird.
And take out the piano.
Home and dry.
Now they're all back in. Okay, hopefully you were able to hear the difference.
So the point is that at the other end of the stream, they're going to need a mix of everything that's mic'd. They're not going to be satisfied with the sound of the room that we heard on that first recording.
That's correct. So when you're sending out on the stream, everything that you want your audience to hear needs to be mic'd, needs to be brought into the mixer, and needs to be mixed together. Now, and that's a mix that is just for the stream. You don't want to play that in your sanctuary because you'll be amplifying those instruments that don't need it. Now, how do you do that? There are a couple of different ways. On a mixer, you have several different buses, and
what's a bus?
You know what?
I was
What's
just
a
going to
bus?
say, what's a bus?
Is it like an aux?
This particular talk is not supposed to be technical.
That's right.
So I will make
No
it real
bus.
basic. I will make it real basic. So a mixer, a very, very basic mixer, has several inputs and one output. It's mixing inputs to one output. It's a mixer. That's what it does. And in the 1960s, like around the Woodstock era, that is what was used to mix Woodstock. Of just a whole bunch of these very small mixers with just 3 or 4 inputs and one output, and they ganged them all together and they mixed them, they connected one to another, and that's how they did the show. Pretty amazing. The recording truck was a different story, but in a modern mixer, you'll have many more inputs, or any number of inputs depending on the mixer, but it will have several different outputs, and each output can have a different mix to it, and that's what we call a mixing bus, right? So each output has its own mixing bus. Now you can apply an input to any of those mixing buses at different levels. So you have your main bus, which goes to your speakers. You'll have an auxiliary bus, which can go to your stream. You can have a second auxiliary bus, which might go to floor monitors, if you have floor monitors, for the musicians to be able to hear themselves. You may have a third auxiliary bus that might go to an overflow room, right? So each bus, each output can go to different destinations. And basically speaking, those are the purposes of buses. Those are the multiple outputs that can be used. And that's how you can create multiple different mixers on one physical mixing desk. And now it's also important to be able to hear what you're mixing, because you're doing different things for different audiences. So your main bus, you're hearing from the loudspeakers, no problem. But if you're using the same mixer and an auxiliary bus to mix for a stream, you'll want to be able to hear that so that you know what your mix sounds like. And you could do that right on the mixing desk, or even better than that, if you're able to pull up a computer and log into your stream. So you're downloading it, and now you can listen to that. And now you're listening essentially to the playback, which is also good, because what you're sending into the stream may not be exactly the same thing as what's coming out of the stream, because of the processing that the streaming service does.
Latency involved in listening in that way as well.
Yes, there is.
Marty,
So
if
what
you
about
show that
questions?
little tiny mixer again
Mhm.
from your presentation, is that readily available?
Sure, let me go back to it.
I know that one of the worries here is going to be, oh my God, I don't have equipment that has all those buses on it. If Marty
Yes,
shows
you
you
do.
this picture here, I think this one has an aux bus on it, doesn't it, Marty?
It does. If you can, so this is spotlighted, right? Let me see if I
Yeah.
can zoom in on
They
this
mostly
thing.
all
Is that
do.
possible?
Yeah, just point to the aux bus. I think it's the yellow buttons, the
So what
yellow
we have
knobs
here
there.
on a typical small mixer is this would be your main mix volume control. The top let's see, these would be like EQ controls, treble and bass, and these would be
No, that's
one
off.
aux.
That's effects. That's effects and aux. The one right above the red is the aux bus, the black knob. The yellow knob just above that is the effects send. So my point is that even a tiny little mixer like this one right here has what you need to do a separate mix for a stream. It's not like you're going to have to go out and buy one of those giant digital consoles to affect this. Something as simple as this has what it takes to do it.
Yeah.
That's the only point I was going to try and make.
Inputs, yeah, as long as it has enough inputs,
right,
and it has enough outputs, you know, something like this could do the job. Now, monitoring is a very important thing. You want to know that what you're actually hearing is what everybody else is hearing. If somebody at home is listening on their home stereo system, and you're listening to a little pair of earbuds, you're not really hearing the same thing that they're hearing. Now, in reality, people at home are listening to a variety of things. They're listening to the speakers on their laptop, or they're listening to their phone with earbuds. They may be listening in their car. Who knows? So the important thing is that you should be listening on something that provides you with an accurate representation of what the sound really sounds like. So you need something that, if you're mixing music, can produce accurate bass and accurate treble, because you may be making equalization adjustments and level adjustments on each of the instruments, and you want to make sure that they're balanced well. If you are listening to something that doesn't have a very good bass response, and you're mixing, you may turn up the bass guitar and the kick drum to make it sound right in your earbuds that don't really have a good bass response to begin with. The result of that is that somebody at home is going to be hearing too much of that, because you're compensating for the deficiencies of your hearing piece, because your hearing piece is not very accurate. So you want to have really good headphones, or ideally, you want to be in a different space that is not hearing the sound from the sanctuary. Because when you have all that sound in the sanctuary, in the room, unless you have really, really, really good headphones that are blocking out all of that sound in the room, they're actually going to be acoustically mixing with what you hear from your headphones. And you're not going to be able to necessarily determine if what you're hearing is coming from the headphones or from the room. I know that sounds a little techie, but there's justification, especially for a larger church, and if you have a big music program and you use bands and you have electric instruments where the sound level in the sanctuary gets loud, it's really, really important to mix your stream from a different space.
Marty,
And
I like looking at the soundboard, but I think we're finished.
thank you so much. To mix from a different space, and even better, on a second mixer. Because when you're in a different space, you have your own mixer, you have much better control over the various things that go on in a mixer, preamp gain, EQ, levels and such, and you're not sharing those things with the mixer that's working in the sanctuary.
Jay has something to add to your.
Well, I think I agree with you. In an ideal world, you might have in a reasonably large and well-off church, you might have the funds to have a front-of-house console. You might have the funds to have a stage monitor console or personal monitor mixing equipment for the musicians, and you might have the funds for another console and somebody to operate it. So a couple of things I just I want to point out And yes, ideally, and I've built out a lot of systems in larger churches. I mean, we're talking, when you start talking about maybe 800 and up in terms of occupancy, where you know, there's plenty of funds to do this, and there's a much larger focus on maybe music, amplified music, contemporary music, as part of services. You'll find, and there's some complexity to it. So, in a couple of different ways. So, you're going to need to have spaces for all these things to happen. You're going to have physical infrastructure to connect all these things together, and you'll have to have people to operate it. And it's not really just enough so that you can have another mixer. It's also really helpful if there's a video monitor and a camera, so whoever is operating the mixer has a view of what's going on stage. Did somebody put down a guitar and pick up a mandolin? Did the wireless microphone go, or any microphone, did somebody grab the wrong microphone? So there are lots of parts and pieces to it, and I agree, it's the best way to do it. And in fact, in my congregation, we had originally planned to have a broadcast or streaming mixer. We have the space, we put all the infrastructure, and the cable is there, but we ran out of funds. So we stopped at, what do we need to open and do services? We need a sound system in the sanctuary that delivers the quality, the sound levels, the speech intelligibility. We needed a good functional system, and we haven't gone any further. So when we went to temporary streaming from the congregation, we built our mix using aux buses from the main front of house console, and we used headphones.
Yes.
So it's not an ideal. However, it is. I'm gonna. I hate to say this, but it's good enough or adequate for getting yourself up and running. For your, you may not have everything you want, but it gets you to a place where you can now do a hybrid service, and then you can always migrate. You can add. Adding a second mixer is something you can do. Finding a space to move, locate a second mixer. These things can generally be accommodated. Actually, having cable and pathways are really important, but I just don't. We're kind of like, there's the aspirational systems, and there may be the systems that we start with before we hit the aspirational part.
Correct.
And I defer to Leo, who has his hand up.
Thank you, Jay.
Yields his time.
I yield my time. Yeah, that's it. I'll yield my time to the representative from London. I think taking where Jay's coming from, where Marty's coming from, and taking the scare factor out of some of this, there are very simple and cost-effective solutions to get you where you want to be at the moment. In particular, there's a couple of things that have literally become universal in this marketplace, which is the Behringer range of equipment, or if you want to go slightly more expensive, Midas. There are lots of other ways to go, but the Behringer, if you start at what I would say is actually their base product, which is the XR18, which comes in at around about $400, or you go up to the 32, which is a 32 channel, so 18 or 32 channels. That's how many channels they can operate. That's how many channels they can bring in of different connections. The 32, I believe, is around about $1,500, and everything that you want to do on there of creating separate mixes can be done on there. J-Lo?
Yes. Just want to take it back out of the weeds, because it could be something as simple as just explaining to someone where to plug in their headphones, that they're monitoring the stream mix and they're not monitoring the room mix. It could be, where do you plug in your headphone? Most congregations already have a soundboard. They may or may not want to upgrade it right away. If they can send an aux bus, how do they listen to what they're sending out on the stream? Where does that plug go? Where do you plug your other end of your headphones into? if we pull up that other little console, every console has a spot. Is that my point? That's my point, right? Every console has a spot, and you have to make sure that you're listening to the right output.
Right. Yes. Any mixer will have a headphone output, and any mixer will provide you a way to listen to different points in the signal path on any channel and on any bus.
Did we want to just quickly go over a quick signal flow through a channel strip and then back out?
That's
not
probably
today.
the next lesson, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, not today.
I wanted to add that even the simple mixers, like that one that I had Marty show again, has all those facilities on it. And ultimately, the only thing that's being done in a mixer is taking what's coming in, putting them together, and putting them someplace for it to go out. There are very creative and very simple ways to get a lot of power out of even a mixer like that. For example, your feed to your sanctuary could be on the left channel, and your feed to the stream can be on the right channel. And how much you feed to each is the little pan knob, which is the functional equivalent of the balance knob on your stereo. It's the pan knob on there. And you can create two mixes just by using the pan knob and the left and right channels. Jay's got a great example he's about to hold up. Right there. These mixers are as little as about $200. Jay's is a little more expensive. He's got a very nice one in his hand, but you know.
I don't recall what I paid for this, but it was probably, I don't know, probably not more than $300.
Want to hold that up again for us?
Sure. This is
a little Soundcraft.
It's a little Allen and Heath Z-E-D.
Yeah.
And this mixer is it's got 4 microphone inputs, so 4 channels of microphone level audio. It has an effects aux bus, and it has just an aux bus that is, so effects buses generally are going to send the signal to your reverb unit, and it's going to follow the level of your channel fader. And then there's another aux bus that could be used to do monitors. So either one of these can be configured so that it could run your streaming audio. It could. So what you'll end up having is a dedicated mix, and the board is set up so that you could monitor the bus that with your headphones, so that you've got that versatility. So we're not talking about an arm and a leg in a very simple application. 4 channels would get you, that's four microphones. They make them larger. They don't get terribly, they're not terribly pricey with the analog mixers. And it's the downside of the downside of an analog mixer would be you don't have the ability to store and recall your settings. So when different people touch the mixer, if they move knobs around, you may find yourself coming in on a Sunday or any given night and finding the settings different from the way you left it. But that's where grease pencils and paper tape come in really handy.
After's tape.
So yes, so old school technology like analog mixers are still perfectly valid, and for the very small church category with very limited budgets, that's a perfectly acceptable solution.
Work with that.
The limitations are going to be the number of inputs and the ability to have it foolproof. Because every setting is mono, is manual, and they will need to be in the right places.
Marty, I do want to point out one real simple feature on something like this. It has a USB port.
Yeah.
This can actually also function as your interface to a computer for streaming.
There you go.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah.
And some of them have ports for USB sticks so that you can play music right through the console by just plugging in a thumb drive.
Not this one.
Not that one. Some of them do. Yeah. For those of you who are interested, one of the common jokes that every sound guy has heard is someone walk around and say, "You know what all these knobs do? How do you remember them all?" And I always reply, "Do you know every name in the phone directory? No, but you know how to look them up." And the thing with an audio console, especially like what was just being held up by Jay, yeah, there's a lot of knobs there, but if you know what one row of them does,
But
you know
they're
what
all
all
the
of the rows
same.
do.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's why it's a channel strip.
That's the channel
It's
strip. So
repeated over and over and again.
what I wanted to point out was we intend to do, we can do midday or evening sessions in Discord where we can give you a lesson in what a channel strip is and different ways you can do mixing, basic, how all those knobs function and what they do. And we're, I'm more than happy to run them. And I think Jay and Marty have said that they'd be willing to do Discord-based video lessons in how to use a mixer. So I'll be quiet.
Now there are even so that's an analog mixer, and they're low cost. They when used properly they sound great, but they have their limitations. And as we're talking, one of those limitations are the ability to automate or to preset and save and recall your settings. So you may have a different set of settings for a singer guitar player than you would for a larger musical ensemble. And whether you have one person, the minister in the pulpit, or Story for All Ages, where you may have three wireless microphones out on the floor. They may be different settings. And so the ability to save and recall your settings can be important. And I'm just trying to pull up a web page here. Let me see if I can share this screen. There
Marty,
are
just to let you know, it's past 8:30, 8:35.
Is it? Okay.
There is.
Well, while I'm doing this, are there any questions? While I'm looking for this.
One in the box that I'm trying to answer via text, but I guess it's worth asking. Somebody hasn't been able to use their grand piano on Zoom. Really poor quality sound. They use an electric keyboard that feeds directly into the laptop streaming Zoom. How do we get the grand piano both in the room and in the Zoom service? And that's what we're trying to explain. But
yeah.
And
Okay,
there's really two parts to that. Yeah, there's
There's a lot
how
of
how you set up Zoom and how you set up the signal that you're feeding into Zoom. Use original sound or turn on original sound helps you get music from voice and piano and things like that to go through Zoom without the automatic gain control and all that other nonsense. Even better is if you're mixing things together and feeding the mix into Zoom. You would use either a microphone or something like a pickup. Jay, did I misspeak?
I guess my first question is there a microphone dedicated to picking up the piano? So that's one. And then, then further to that is what kind of microphone is it? Some are going to do a better job than others. Third question is, do you have the ability to listen to that microphone through the mixer and only that microphone so that you could then maybe put on a pair of headphones and move the microphone to find the location around the piano that gives you the best balance of the keyboard, the timbre, etc. So that's probably, that would be my first step to trying to figure out how to get a better piano sound is, if you've got a good mic, let's find out the best location for the microphone and then start with that. And some locations are going to be better than others. There is no standard. You can always put the microphone at X marks the spot in a piano because all pianos sound different. And
this apparently is a grand piano too. I don't know how big it is.
Okay, so and generally with a grand piano, if I'm miking a grand piano, I'm going to at least put it on short stick so that I can get the microphone proximate to the harp. If you close the piano and then try to pick it up, you're generally not going to get a great sound from the piano for streaming or even just reinforcement in the room. So I'd start at least on short stick. If you can go to high stick. It gives you more latitude to move the microphone in on a boom towards the center of the harp. A boom stand.
Mic stand.
A boom stand. The other thing you can do is you can also actually, I've done this before. You could use gaffer's tape or some sort of clamps and clamp or mount the microphone so that it's sitting directly above the harp. Again, first you have to find out where do you get the piano sound that you want, and you're going to find that through trial and error by listening.
And to Jay's point about the what stick you put it on, short stick, closes the sound in. We actually found with the piano that we use in our sanctuary that close miking the harp is a terrible location because the piano happens to have a fairly loud action. So you're hearing a lot of clanking and banging. It's a great piano, but the noise from the action tends to get picked up. We actually found that on a full stick, about 2 feet outside the piano, gave us a beautiful blend of the piano. So every piano, I guess I'm reinforcing, every piano is different. You end up experimenting to find out what works best for you. We have found that in some circumstances, we also have a Barkusberry pickup mounted on the soundboard of the piano, and in some circumstances, that actually sounds pretty good. It all depends what you're trying to do with the piano sound, what you're going to do with microphoning, pickups,
Are you putting it through the PA system? Or are you putting it through stage monitors? Do you have
all
to
depends,
Do you have to get the piano's level up above other instruments, right? Those are all going to, that would tend to dictate things like that.
And if you're miking it at any distance, how do you prevent bleed from other instruments?
Sure.
Microphone pianos are one of the most difficult instruments to mic, and there are 100 different ways to do it, and we could spend hours talking about it.
We could. And
if you get us going, we will go for hours talking about it.
I like small diaphragm condensers myself.
I use a pair of NT5s. I really like them. The Roadies.
There's a better question in the box. It's a really good one.
Calm down. I just wanted to show this this screen here. This is a small digital mixer. It has 8 inputs, and it's from QSC. It is a digital mixer, which has all of the features of a large digital mixer, including the ability to save and recall settings, which we call scenes. So you can have 100 different scenes for 100 different applications. It also has tons of effects and EQs and just all kinds of great stuff. And it can also be controlled by a tablet, an iPad or an Android tablet or a phone. So you can actually, and this is one of the big benefits of a digital mixer, is you can go up to the stage or anywhere else in the room and listen and make settings changes. You can mix from anywhere in the room. You don't have to be tied down to a single place in the room where your mixer is. And that's really very handy, especially if you have a larger stage and you have bands and you have floor monitors. You can go up to the stage and mix the floor monitors and hear them yourself rather than relying on the musicians who may not actually know the best use for a floor monitor. But even for simple things, you may have no place in your sanctuary to put a mixer except up in your balcony, but the sound on the balcony may be completely different than the sound on the floor because of the way your loudspeakers are arranged. So you can go down to the floor with a tablet and actually mix the sound from down there without having to take up pews and having to locate your mixer on a desk on the floor. So that's pretty cool. That was pretty deep. So what questions? Let's wrap it up with some questions.
Here's a good question from Gary MC, Gary Mick, I guess. What level, i.e. -5 dB or otherwise, should the sound be out to the stream? That's a good question.
Yes, it is. It depends on your streaming service.
And how you're measuring it.
There is no standard that everybody agrees to. And so each of the services will have their own criteria, their own acceptable volume level. And if you send them
How do
too
you find that
strong a
out?
level, too loud a level, they will compress it and bring it down, and that will do weird things to your sound. So you want to try and send them what it is that they are looking for. Generally speaking, minus 24 is a good setting, dB full scale, dBFS. Anywhere from minus 18 to minus 24 is generally what they're looking for. Now, how you measure that is important. And this goes actually, I've seen a number of questions on the Discord just today about how do you control all of the different sound sources from everybody who's contributing to Zoom, because they're not all in the same place and everybody has their own volume control. And so there is no one central location like a mixer mixing a stage for you to control audio. And that's a really good thing because, you know, one of the biggest issues with Zoom calls or any other any other session or meeting where you have multiple people contributing from different places and everybody has their own volume control is making sure that they're consistent. And that goes for people talking as well as playback of video clips. When everybody's at the same level, the viewer doesn't have to think about it. They don't have to reach for their volume control. But when one person is way loud and the next person is way soft, that's an interruption. Leo?
Thank you. I think there's a little bit of confusion in what you've just said there, Marty, when you said minus 24, when the question was coming in about minus 5, and why there is a big difference in that. The question typically that you find when somebody is trying to put a mix or put something out is they're talking about where their peak gain is. And the peak gain in the meter that's above me is actually what the true peak. Actually, this is working on your side, not mine. So it's dropping and dropping and dropping because I'm not actually being recorded in here. So it's only hitting. It's only your voices that are making my mic.
Voice in there too?
There you go.
Anybody's
There you
voice?
go.
There
So
we go.
if you
There's
look
some
at when
J-Lo in
J-Lo
there.
speaks,
J-Lo.
she's hitting the true peak, and the true peak is pushing it up. And the true peak is what you normally see when you see your meters on when you're used to your meters. You see the one that you see going up into the red. When you hit the red, you're normally at minus 3 or somewhere, depending upon what your meters are set at.
And you're in the danger zone of clipping.
In the danger zone. Once you hit 0, you clip. That's it. You're out. So I would always set a mix to go at minus 3. But what peak? But what Marty was talking about is the LUFS, which is the level that you want voices to set at.
Right.
This here that we're looking at is the standard. Minus 24 is the standard for voice. If I change this meter to show you what YouTube wants, it wants minus 15, and the same for Spotify is normally around minus 15. But that's over a period of LUFS is normally over. Am I right? It's 5 seconds. Can someone confirm that? I think it's 5 seconds. No, I'm getting a no.
I don't know what the time constant is for LUFS, but I think one thing it's important to bring out. So there's an absolute limit to how much signal you can put into your interface, right? When as you said, Leo, when you hit 0, you're done. That's full scale. Anything more, we're distorted. We can't handle that. So the one thing to keep in mind, whether we're just having conversational speech, we need to have some reserve, because sometimes people are going to get loud. Conversations can be elevated. They can make raise their voices to make a point. And with music, you need to have some be aware that you're going to have crescendos. You're going to have the whole band, banging out the end of the song, and you're going to raise the level. So the difference between the nominal level and the maximum level is the amount of headroom that we want in reserve. So you want a margin of headroom so that there's a place to go, and then there's a place where you don't go, and that's 0 dB full scale. And when we talk about the -3 or the -5 or the -6, that gives you some margin even above, if you say that's the top limit that you want to push a signal in your system.
And metering is a topic that we can also spend quite a bit of time
True.
on, because there's a lot of different ways to measure sound, and you want to measure for different things, whether it be single person speaking or people singing in a group or instrumentation. The energy density will change the way that you meter it. But to sort of answer the question, before we actually go on the air, we actually do a mic check. So everybody who's going to be talking on the show does a mic check. And David, if we can spotlight the Julian meter.
It's spotlighted. Unless you're on a different view, Marty.
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing the Julian meter. There it is. That's the one. So as you know, everybody who talks looks at this meter, and this meter is looking at a Zoom client all by itself. So it's on a separate machine. We have a Zoom client that's logged into the meeting, and this is the video that Zoom client is seeing. And as I'm talking, you'll see my level changing. You see the meter on the left, and you see the histogram that's traveling from right to left. And the idea is that we don't want to go too far into the red when we're talking like that, because now I'm louder than everybody else. And you don't want to be too far or too low, because now I'm speaking very far away from the microphone. So everybody tries to meet the same level, and everybody's adjusting their own level to make this meter fall in the right place. So,
and Crystal even sound checked her YouTube videos to make sure that they were coming in at a relative level as well, so that they weren't screaming hot.
Right.
Very useful.
Right. Very important is not just microphones, but any playback that you're going to do. Everybody needs to check all of the sound sources before you go on the air. It's a mic check. And it's also a great opportunity to make sure that everybody's microphone is working, that your cameras are aimed in the right place. You don't want to just be seeing the top of somebody's head and the ceiling fixture, or, you want to make sure that you're centered properly, your background is looking good, your lighting is good. It's a QC, it's a quality control, it's a mic and camera check before the event starts. Everybody has to be there if you're going to be on the air. Think of it this way.
Everybody who has anything to share in the service has to be there to share their thing from their home machine.
Think of it this way.
They're the ones
if you were in the sanctuary and you were presenting a service, right? You want to make sure that everybody is rehearsed and everybody knows where to stand and everybody is talking into the microphone. And this is no different than a presentation at a conference or in a sanctuary or in front of a classroom or anything else. It's a presentation, and you want to make sure that you're presenting something that people want to see, that people don't get confused by, and that you want to make sure that your message is getting across.
Now, to answer the next question, which I can hear coming, is that meter that Marty just showed is one of many really simple free meters that are easy to put into your computer so that you can actually enable this kind of checking prior to a service. So there.
And this wouldn't be actually may not be necessary if you don't have remote Zoom participants.
Right.
If everything is being performed in the sanctuary and you're taking a feed from a mixing console into your computer, which is hosting whatever soft codec or streaming service, you have metering there to make sure that you're not going to overdrive or overload or underdrive your interface. But when people are remote, this is critical.
And this all goes to the question of presentation quality, right? Okay, so here's an analogy. So one of the things that I'm most looking forward to in the new post-pandemic normal, whatever that is going to be, one of the things I'm really looking forward to is going out to dinner and eating inside a restaurant. We happen to eat out a lot, and one of the criteria that we use to select a place and for returning to a restaurant is the experience that we have when we're there. How many times have you been to a place where you feel like your presence in the restaurant is an inconvenience to the staff? I mean, you make a reservation and then you have to wait a half an hour for your table. The wait staff isn't paying attention to you, or they're poorly trained, or they don't even know the menu. Then they bring your food in the wrong order, or they bring the appetizer and then the entree right after the appetizer, and you don't have time to eat. I mean, the experience is terrible. And, while the food may be fine, that's probably not a place I'm going to come back to.
And
However,
people are not going to come back to a service that they did not think went well online. They won't come
the place that recognizes that among all of the restaurants in town, I chose them that evening and lets me know that they appreciate my business by providing me with a memorable experience. This is a place I'm going to come back to again and again. So going to services, whether in person or online, is an experience that you are providing to people, and before anything else, that's what they're going to remember. I mean, if the experience isn't good, it doesn't matter what the sermon's saying. It doesn't matter what the music is saying. If the experience isn't there, if they don't have a favorable experience, they don't have the incentive to come back. And this is why I cringe when I hear the phrase, good enough. I mean, what is good enough? If you may have, your congregation is a forgiving audience. That's a given. But I don't see that as a reason to strive for mediocrity. I mean, if you're going to do something, anything, cook a meal, do anything, why not do your best to do it well? The rewards will be worth it. Okay, so that's it.
It's 9
I'd like
o'clock.
I'd like to thank our panelists and our guests today for such a wonderful conversation. And we're not done. We're not done. You can hang around. Hang on a second. We hope that you've enjoyed our time together. Perhaps you found it informative, enlightening, enriching, energizing, or motivating. Watch the Discord for the agenda for the next few weeks. And announcements about where you can find recordings for the shows. We do record them all. I'm sorry it's taking a bit longer to get them up than I hoped. But hybridization, hybrid worship, this is all new ground that most of us are treading for the first time and exploring. They present us with new possibilities and new options for transforming our church and transforming the experience and reinventing ourselves. So make it your own. Reinvent your ministries. Redefine your communities and who you choose to serve. These are real opportunities here. Dare to dream. Okay, we are going to end the formal part of the show now and stop the recording. And then we will open up everybody's ability to open your microphones, and we can have a casual conversation for the next few minutes, or as long as people are here. So we can answer your questions directly. If we didn't get to a Discord question during the show, we can answer it live, and let us know what you're thinking. Have a good evening, everybody.